those of you who earn W-2 income, those of you who do not hold real assets, those of you who do not hold Bitcoin are the ones who will suffer from that. And other countries understand that. The bulk of foreign countries' reserves are in dollars. If the US is going to take the dollar and devalue it, the last place they want to be is holding a bunch of dollars that are getting worth less every day. And so the only solution is something that is not controlled by central governments, and that's called Bitcoin.
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing all right. I know it's been a while since we did an update on this channel. There really wasn't a lot of things to go over. Yeah, we could have talked about the tariffs. There was some interesting price action, but I think it's important to discuss what's going on right now for two reasons. One, because we're nearing the end of the month, and if we have a look at the candle right here, you know, this was a very, very, very nice recovery that we had from this candle where we had a lot of sell pressure in March, right? And, you know, you could even say as long as we're closing around this area, that's pretty good. Obviously, we'd want to close sort of above the, I guess, $95,000, $55 area. Really, whether or not we get that exactly is not a huge deal. If we were able to come up here a little bit, you know, then we could say that we've completely engulfed this previous candle, which would be pretty good for Bitcoin. Now, the last time that I had actually put out any type of analysis over on LevX, for example, you know, down here, we had posted this. By the way, you can follow me on LevX for free. The link is below. And it does, you know, I said about 76,000 would have been probably where we're not going to see Bitcoin go below again, because we had seen this hash ribbon buy signal. Now, obviously, if we come over here, did we go lower than that? Yeah, we actually did dip below into this other channel. We came down to about 74,600. So really, give or take, you know, we still had those daily candle closes right around that $76,000 level. So, I mean, give or take, yeah, I was off by like $2,000, but ultimately, that was the area where if you were looking for the dip to buy, probably was that opportunity, because as you can see right here, we had this massive descending wedge, and what happened right here was where we had multiple points of this resistance, we actually found support, and as soon as we found that support, that's when we saw that move that brought us up to where we are right now. But it's not just the price action that's really interesting. I also want to talk about something absolutely massive that's happening that most people are not paying attention to. They're not even aware that it's going on right now, and yet it's happening right under our noses, and it could be one of the most bullish things possibly for Bitcoin. Now, when we talk about this scenario, we're not talking about what's going to happen, you know, tomorrow or next week, but when you're looking to this sort of mid to long-term outlook for Bitcoin, even just potentially to the end of this year, you're going to want to stick around because it's really interesting what's actually happening. And not to mention that while this is going on, the dollar since January, okay, was down about 11%, slight pullback, but, you know, the dollar is down 10% as well. And this is definitely something that is affecting these global markets, right? You're seeing a lot of these countries, they're ditching US debt. They're worried about the dollar. They're looking for other places to park their capital. So, you know, I'm never one to root for the decline of the dollar, but we do know that if the world is denominating majority things in dollars and the dollar is down 10% this year alone, that's kind of scary, and you want to look for some other place to park your money. Well, we've seen gold has been doing quite well, right? And it seems like Bitcoin could, in fact, be following that. So, you know, if you have a look at the global M2 money supply, you might have seen this chart all across the internet. Bitcoin tends to follow this with a slight bit of a lag. And although we don't exactly have the US is always printing dollars, let's be honest. But yes, Powell has come out and said we're going to keep the rates where they are. That's not what we're seeing globally. What we're seeing globally is the printers going absolutely insane all over the place, right? We've seen rates being cut over in Europe, for example. And what a lot of people are not realizing is that, yes, the Bitcoin strategic reserve in the US, it is, you know, still looked at as a US-driven sort of asset. It's starting to really become a global asset, and the US is not as important as it maybe potentially used to be when it comes to the Bitcoin price action and these other nation states, sovereign wealth funds allocating to Bitcoin. And I want to tell you a story too, because I speak to a lot of people in the industry. I speak to a lot of these OTC desks, you know, dealing with massive quantities of money. And when you hear what they've been getting calls about, you're probably going to wish maybe you bought more. That's all I'm saying. So we will get into all that, obviously, you know, and just getting back to the gold chart, you know, you could see that if we just take gold, right, lagging 3 months, because Bitcoin tends to be a little bit behind when it comes to this chart of gold, you could see that when we overlap it, there's a lot of examples of where it follows it. And right here, this is a pretty big gap between, where Bitcoin is and what gold has done. Now, obviously, gold's percentages are much smaller. Gold has only, everyone's rooting for gold hitting all-time highs. Well, I mean, gold, doubled since 2011? Bitcoin, what has Bitcoin done since 2011? I mean, I think Bitcoin is still the best choice, but at the same time, seeing that sort of run towards, hard assets like gold and Bitcoin, I think you know where this is going, right? Before we get into it, I just wanted to mention with meta signals, if you guys do want to get these signals, they are free in the Discord. If you want the full package, obviously you can buy the NFT. Here's just one of them. This was a short, actually, that we did actually have a target that got hit, and you can now place live in the Discord. If you don't want to use your exchange, you can click there, and I don't know if it takes you to BingX, but you can definitely do it directly through that. So I highly recommend you guys check that out. And of course, for decentralized trading, Antarctic is a great choice as well. There is a bonus in the link below if you guys are interested that will actually also give you VIP tier status, so you can trade with extremely reduced fees, which it's already fractions of a penny anyway. But if you're interested, check all that below. There's like $70,000 in bonuses. So what I want to start with, before we get into the charts, I have a lot to go over, is we have $12 billion Bitwise. This is Matt Hogan saying that sovereign wealth funds are trying to buy Bitcoin faster than the US. So they say the race is on.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with a sovereign that was interested in the ETF because they wanted to get ahead of the US buying it. And it was just a faster, easier button. I do think they'll end up buying both. If you look at the gold market, for instance, that's what you see. People own gold ETFs and they own gold bars. The same thing is going to be true here in crypto. So I think it's probably more likely that more sovereigns are going direct, but you'll definitely see more than one take the ETP route. It's just incredibly convenient, incredibly low cost.
Now, if you think he's just saying this, right, just to get, just to rile up the crowd, I will tell you that, and of course they couldn't tell me specifically, there are confidentiality between, these clients that they have, but the OTC desks that I speak with are telling me that not only have there been massive Bitcoin-backed loans coming out, which means people don't want to sell their Bitcoin, right? They want to borrow against it. They've also seen massive influx into OTC buying via some are the ETFs, some are just straight, spot, but it's coming from other countries, and one of them is an actual country itself. Now, I don't know which one. We know El Salvador, we know what they're doing. I don't know which country this is or which sovereign wealth fund this is, but I do have confirmation that they are, in fact, coming, all right? They realize that they have to get a piece of the pie. The other interesting fact about this is that this is all coinciding with a time where Bitcoin exchange amounts are just plummeting. I mean, they're literally absolutely falling off a cliff here. And, price is still continuing to chug upward. So again, you have demand increasing. You have massive supply shock, which we've talked about for years. It's only a matter of time until you see the outcome, right? And the, what was it? The Swiss Central Bank, they were speaking the other day, I don't have the video, where they were talking about they need to get ahead of the US. And in fact, you could see that the Swiss Central Bank is buying Bitcoin exposure through Strategy, the rebranded MicroStrategy. But again, they're also looking for these ETFs. Not to mention that the Federal Reserve no longer requires banks to provide notification when dealing with Bitcoin and crypto. Right? Now, this doesn't mean that it's all just an open door policy. Of course, there's still some hoops to jump through, I'm sure. But now the banks don't have to run this through anybody, right? They're able to just offer this freely to their clients as they see fit. I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it, but again, these are just these baby steps, right? It's becoming more common. It's not the weird guy on the internet or the dark net or just being used for criminal activities. No, it's becoming something that every single individual is beginning to realize that they need to start putting on their balance sheet in their portfolio, because it's more risky to not have exposure than it is to have exposure. And we've seen these numbers go from 1% to 3%, even being suggested up to 15%. So yeah, I think these numbers are only going to go up from here, and you're going to see a lot of people trying to follow in the footsteps of Michael Saylor, and some of these other companies. And here's an even longer clip. You have, this is Fred Thiel, and he's the CEO of Mara, talking about why the Bitcoin strategic reserve is so incredibly important for the US, and how this is sparking a fire, like a wildfire, that is currently spreading right now. Now, this is no longer something that we're talking about could happen, might happen, potentially could happen. No, it's happening right now.
So the global economy has operated with a very high dollar dominance. With the current level of US debt, the previous weaponization of the dollar, the global economy is very scared of dollars, right? The international sovereigns have decreased their buying of US debt. The sixth largest buyer of treasury bills today is a stablecoin company called Tether. And the US government is very scared of the world going away from the dollar. And so they want to ensure dollar dominance. You know, President Trump said he wants the BRICS countries not to abandon the dollar, right? So if countries are moving to own lots of Bitcoin and trade in Bitcoin, the US has to have a lot of Bitcoin, and they have to hold a lot of hash rate, because Bitcoin mining, I think, is this big misnomer. We should really rename it. It's called Bitcoin transaction processing and Bitcoin network security. Two different functions, right? Because if the rest of the globe has 80% of the global hash rate, well, people transacting in the US with Bitcoin may be locked out of 8 out of every 10 transactions, or 8 out of every 10 blocks. And so it becomes of strategic importance for the US to have a lot of mining inside the country. To do that, we have to have much more liberal energy policies. We have to fix FERC and permitting and all these other things. But the US also has to build a very big strategic reserve of Bitcoin, because we have a strategic oil reserve not because we're short of oil in this country. We pump more oil out of the ground here than Saudi Arabia does. We have lots of gold in Fort Knox, not because the dollar's backed by gold. That ended 50 years ago. We have gold in Fort Knox, so if there's an attack on the dollar, the US government has a way to defend the dollar. And it's not something they talk about a lot. We have a strategic petroleum reserve so the government can control the price of oil domestically, which is what President Biden did not too long ago. So we need a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Other countries know we know that. They know it, and they're starting to buy. And even countries where before there was a belief that Bitcoin is this bad thing are waking up to the fact that they need to hold some Bitcoin to make sure that they're not left out of this game, because the US government's intention is to inflate away the debt. And by that, I don't mean let inflation run rampant. They want the dollar to devalue. Right? The dollar index today is trading at about 1.06, right? It should be down at about 100, as it's called, right? Which is a even par to where it's been historically. So the dollar's overvalued right now. If you devalue the dollar, how do you do that? Some of you may have heard that the Trump administration has talked about creating a sovereign wealth fund. What happens when you take lots of dollars, sell them to buy other currencies to go buy and invest in other countries? The price of the dollar goes down. What currency is our debt denominated in? Dollars. How do you get the debt to go down? You make dollars less valuable in the world. Those of you who earn W-2 income, those of you who do not hold real assets, those of you who do not hold Bitcoin are the ones who will suffer from that. And other countries understand that. The bulk of foreign countries' reserves are in dollars. If the US is going to take the dollar and devalue it, the last place they want to be is holding a bunch of dollars that are getting worth less every day. And so the only solution is something that is not controlled by central governments, and that's called Bitcoin.
All right, guys, so let's hop into the chart. Let me show you exactly what I'm seeing right now. Should we be bearish? Should we be bullish? Is this a trap? Well, I'll let you decide for yourself, but I can provide my analysis, and I think you might have an idea of what I'm seeing. Now, of course, we do have a very, very small CME futures gap. We do tend to close these gaps. Very, very tiny one. This gap is around 91,000. Okay, about $91,600. So we could potentially see Bitcoin, have a little bit of a retest down to this area. We would get that nice support on the upwards trend. And there is absolutely no denying that we have broken out of a clear downtrend. Could it be a possible Trap, of course it could, anything could be, but at the end of the day, I am just taking this a day at a time, because one thing that we had said was we had these two main areas, right? We had this area down here, lots of volume, as you can see right here, and we had this area right here, lots of volume. It's kind of dark, but you can see up here, it's actually in the background. I probably should have pulled it into the front, but you get my point. And we've had this nice upward slope, right, with a little bit of a fake out. Now, this blue area that I had highlighted, which was essentially this area right here, we didn't have really any corrective price action in that area. And what you want to do after having these types of moves, you want to build some sort of a foundation, right? You want to come down, fill that. And what happened is now currently we are on our second week holding above this level. So basically what we did is we went from this range to this range, to this range, and now we are back in this range, right? And again, you know, the area of volume sort of around, I'd say 98,000, lot of volume right there. So that is an area of concern. You know, I do think it's possible, but again, we could go down to close the CME futures gap. Nothing goes up in a straight line, but as you can see, we're still ultimately putting in higher highs and higher lows. Now, obviously, if we break out of this, well, then we'll have to start talking about it, but that has yet to happen. In fact, the absolute opposite has happened. And if we look at our Fibonacci extensions, if I zoom in right here, you can't deny that this was an absolute perfect retest of the 0.618, which is arguably the golden pocket of the move, right? So the area below at the 0.5, about 91,000, right? And really, when you look at it on a chart this big, you're talking about moves in here, you know, little moves in here. Could we come down to the 0.38? Sure. But again, still constructive pattern. So nothing really to be worried about right there. The next target, however, to the upside would be 0.786 at around $102,000 for Bitcoin. Now, here's just a bunch of indicators that we use. We have the Gaussian, stochastic RSI. We have also the MACD down here. As you guys can see, it's starting to curve. And generally speaking, you know, what do you notice when you see areas where we move from the red to the green? You know, that would put us right about here. Okay, last time it happened right here, that would put us right about here. And we're not quite there. We may have maybe 1 or 2 weeks left, but these are in fact going to cross. What do you think is going to happen? Not to mention the fact that ever since we got above this band, we have used it as support. And I can actually show you that in some other instances as well. One of them being the fact that we're back above the 21 exponential. All of these are upward sloping. They are going from highest to lowest, right? Low, depending on how you look at it, but you have the 200, the 100, the 50, and the 21, and we're above all of that, and the 21 is curving up, and we just got this green dot. Now, if you look at the similar scenarios on the market cipher, the last time that we had, I might even have another example back here. You know, last time that we had these examples, I've marked out, we could do some measurements, you know, from the time, you know, we got above the 21, that was a 72%, and I'm being generous here. That was a 166%. This one was a 74% roughly. And, you know, what do you think we're going to do here? I would assume it'd be somewhere within that ballpark, right? We do have money flow. Now, you might be saying, well, what about down here? Well, down here was different because, as you could see, we were clearly in the red. So there was sell pressure. The money flow was flowing out. The money flow is flowing in. It's flowing in. It's flowing in. So we were not in the red. We're in the green. If we were in the red, then I would take that, you know, with a grain of salt. The other thing to point out is the Super Guppy, which I know it has a silly name, but we've used this on the channel. Generally speaking, once we get into the green, we stay into that green for a very, very long time. And once you start losing it or falling below it, you have an issue. And as you can see right here, we could not get back above it. In this area, it was acting as resistance, and the band actually flipped the other way. Like, it actually twisted and flipped to the downside. If we look at what's happening now, this band is expanding. It's expanding to the upside, right? It's expanding like this. We don't have it flipping. We never touch the bottom, and we are sitting back above all of the bands as well. So, again, guys, everything on here is really just saying that Bitcoin looks healthy. Now, I don't know everything that's going on in the world. I don't know how the tariffs could affect it. I don't claim to be an expert when it comes to tariffs. I don't even know if anybody is an expert. The last time we had something like this was 90 years ago. So I don't even know if there's anyone alive that can speak on behalf of that. If they are alive, they probably were an infant. So, you know, to say that we know how this is going to end, we don't, right? But if I didn't know what was going on in the world, I didn't know we were having this tariff issue, the dollar issue, all this, and I just looked at a chart of Bitcoin, and I had no idea what was going on, Bitcoin looks healthy, it looks constructive, it looks very bullish. There are potentials of range bound. You could fall down to some of those lower levels, right? You could go down to the low 80s, possibly. It could happen. But again, that would just be opportunities, in my opinion, for accumulation. So just wanted to give you guys an update at the end of the day. If you want to leave on a bullish video, I can drop this from Max Kaiser.
So Bitcoin should trade at parity to gold in terms of market capitalization, which means that it could easily go from 85,000 a coin to 850,000 a coin during this cycle. So say the next 5 years. So you got 1,000% return in 5 years. I think is a reasonable expectation for Bitcoin as it achieves parity in market capitalization with gold, which it definitely should, because it does everything gold does, but it does it better.
But yeah, that's it for me, guys. Again, if you are looking to trade, there are a lot of great places. Blowfin and LevX are great. LevX, I do have you can follow me for free. You don't have to trade if you want to just, literally, if you click the link, you're automatically subscribed to me. So sometimes I post there when I'm not, on Twitter or YouTube. Also, Femex has a great deal going as well. They are still one of the longest lasting non-KYC exchanges out there. So I know it can be tough trading, not telling you what to do, but I have all that below. If you guys do want to learn how to trade, obviously be careful, be safe. Best strategy is just DCA and HODL, but I do have some tutorials popping up right here, right now. Until next time, guys, stay crypto. And of course, peace out.